And I don't have to be terribly concerned about building coalitions. And I agree with 95% of what he said, but with respect to maybe 5% we have a disagreement over. And we'll get to that in a moment. A little bit about my story. One side of my family is all Irish Catholic. The other side is all Scotch Presbyterian. And out pops the Southern Baptist. And if you can explain that, you'll understand a bit about me. My father, I lost him back in 1999. But before I lost him, every year we went to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. If you've never been, you've got to check this place out. It's one of the most beautiful things you'll ever see. For a child, the streams were enticing. They were inviting. And he would take me down and talk to me about things as we would walk along the streams. Now, one of the things I wanted to do as a kid, I wanted to get on the rocks and bounce from rock to rock. Slippery. Some of the rocks are unstable. And sometimes he would say, son, be sure you find something steady, something sure. Something steady, something sure. And that stuck with me. Years later, I'm 13. I come home from church. And if you've ever been a convicted Southern Baptist, you know how it feels. You know you're a sinner. You know you're in trouble. You feel guilty. You feel disgusting. And so I went back to my bed and I laid down. And I tried to find peace. That was my mother's first signal that something was wrong. A 13-year-old laying down after church on a Sunday. So she sends my father in there to me. And we talked for a bit, and he figured it out. And he said, something steady, something sure. Such are political parties. Such are Americans. We have to have a foundation before we can spring forth. We have to believe in something. Sometimes parties get too big, they lose their mission. They stop fighting for the people and start fighting for the special interest. They ignore you because you don't have the campaign finance funds. But the guys that do, they embrace. And the next thing you know, the principles that are so near and dear to us as conservatives, they're flipped. And we barely recognize our party. There's nothing special about the term Republican. Been a Republican since I was 14 years old. Let me say it again. There's nothing special about the term Republican. It's a word, a 10-letter word, starts with an R, ends with an N. What makes it special are the convictions underlying the word. And our party has jettisoned that for the most part. I know some disagree, and that's okay. But I've got the evidence to prove it. In fact, I've got 19.1 trillion pieces of evidence to prove it. I've got a constitution in shambles. I have a federal judiciary that tells us more, it dictates to us more than ever imaginable, and a president who right now acts like more of a dictator or a king than he does an executive branch officer of the federal government. If he knew his place, he would know he has no business dictating to Mississippi what its schools are going to do in their restrooms. Amen. But we have to remind him of his place if he's going to be set straight. Now, we do great press releases, our leaders in Congress. Have you seen their ACU scores? Have you seen their conservative review scores? Oh, they'll tell you how great they are, and they'll tell you how conservative they are, but the fruit is not conservative. Now, that gets me in trouble. I guess I'm the guy in the party nobody likes anymore. I'm fighting for the same values I was fighting for so many years ago.
Here.
I haven't changed. The Constitution matters. Civil liberties matter. Fiscal restraint and budgeting matters. Personal responsibility matters. It's not talking points. It's our foundation. And those issues aren't subject to compromise, ever, under any circumstances. But we have. I mean, consider this for a moment. There are a lot of things a Republican will do that a conservative will not.
Amen.
Just ask Lindsey Graham. Just ask John McCain. Just ask Bob Dole. And we've heard these messages for unity before, and I am for unity. That's what nobody seems to get. I want unity as much as the next man, but I want unity around principles, not personalities.
Exactly.
Here, here.
People will invariably let us down, but our principles won't let us down. They speak to us. They're eternal, and they matter. We were told to unify behind Bob Dole. It got us nowhere. We were told to unify behind Mitt Romney. It got us nowhere. We were told to unify behind a number of congressional and Senate candidates that got us nowhere because the needle hasn't moved to the right. I'm passionate because I've been seeing it and I've been complaining about it for years. This is going to get me in trouble, but I have to say it. Russ Latino's done a really good job bringing attention to this issue. AFP is your organization, right, Russ?
Yeah.
I know it's Republican to give Fortune 500 companies millions and millions of dollars, but it's not conservative. I know it's Republican to vote for bailouts and TARP, but it's not conservative. I know it's Republican to support Loretta Lynch, but it's not conservative. We can go on and on and on. They funded amnesty. They funded Planned Parenthood. They voted for the worst conceivable spending bill imaginable on December the 15th of last year, and then came home and told us how conservative they are. Fruits. Yes, we need to unify, certainly, but around the principles, not the personalities. I used to be told all the time, well, you know, so-and-so's a good boy. That's why we send him to Washington, or that's why we send him to Jackson. You do know you can send good old boys that are principled, right? They do make those. And I'm not impugning the integrity of those individuals. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not telling you they're lying to you. I'm telling you they're not founded in those constitutional principles of conservatism. Maybe the party has grown. Maybe there are so many Democrat converts we can't keep track. Who knows? And we want a big party. We want to change the way things are. But are you satisfied with the current posture of this party?
Heck
No.
Me either. Me either. Look, there are so many things that we could be doing as a party that do not involve compromising our principles. You know, it's funny, the Democrats fight like dogs, don't they? You ever noticed? Obamacare. How many chances on amendments do we have with Obamacare? You see, when they get the numbers, what do? They fight. We get the numbers, what do?
Cave.
Cave.
Unfortunately. And I know it's not making me popular, but I wouldn't say anything to you that I wouldn't say to them. Consider something for a moment, okay? That's my Rand Paul sticker, by the way. Even though I was Ted Cruz's campaign guy. Consider something just for a moment. Today I was just curious. I thought, well, I'm going to speak, and I didn't know what I was talking about, or at least what I was going to discuss. And I thought, well, let's think about, just in the last year, 1 year, how many times things have become topsy-turvy in D.C. or in Jackson? Loretta Lynch, right? The earmark process is still problematic. The deficit is constantly increasing. And a lot of that debt was added under Republican administrations. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
You do know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
George Bush, in fact, during his first 7 years, increased the deficit from a percentage standpoint greater than Barack Obama did in his first 6. That's year by year. The 1 year Obama did exceed Bush's best year was Obama's first year, and that was the result of TARP and the bills that were passed during the Bush administration. They re-elected John Boehner, remember? After all of the objections, after all the criticism, they still re-elected John Boehner. They funded the amnesty program. What about that Iran deal? Anybody read that? Social issues, Planned Parenthood, unusual forays into criminal justice reform, the great fiscal betrayal. How many times have Republicans increased the debt limit when they failed to control the Congress here lately?
Every time.
Every time. Obama trade, Islamic refugees from Syria, power of the purse they surrendered to the president, amnesty. That was just this year. You notice I didn't mention No Child Left Behind? I didn't mention Medicare Part D. That was the biggest entitlement program of a generation passed under George Bush's watch. I know I'm being hypercritical. I'm looking for a party of principle again. Is that too much to ask?
No.
But Republicans, even in our state, bond bills. You know what a bond bill is, right?
Yeah.
It's a credit card charge.
Yep.
And we've got your credit card, and we're using it.
Tire plant, Ingalls Shipyard.
You know, there are Republicans pushing for a gas tax increase, you know that, right? They tell us our bridges are gonna fail if we don't raise taxes. But we just spent more than, well, I have $300 million on port projects in a one bond. Prioritizing. Now I'm getting to the meat of it. I'm gonna start wrapping up. Our party's divided because of personalities. We're trying to unite again around principles. That doesn't make us the best guys. Do you know I've never been a member of a Tea Party?
We can fix that.
Yeah? But what do they say? What do they say about me, Laura?
Tea Party candidate.
They call you the Tea Party candidate.
They've called me a bunch of crazy stuff, right?
That was probably one of the nicer things.
That was a nice thing. The point is, there is a division in the party. There's no other way, and I say this with forgiveness in my heart, there's no way that the entire Jackson GOP establishment can support John Kasich over the other candidates in the field if they were truly rooted in their principles.
Exactly.
Here, here.
That's right.
Exactly.
John Kasich was for Obamacare.
Common
John
Core.
Kasich was for Common Core. John Kasich was for amnesty and basically more federal control over local educational matters. And everybody here, including Greg Harper, backed him.
Yep.
Now consider that moment for a second. Greg Harper's a good guy. He's a good man. And he says he's against all of the things. But he was supporting a president that was in charge of pushing all of those agenda items. That doesn't make Greg a bad person. His founding, his foundational principles, where are we as a party right now? So we are divided. That doesn't mean all is lost. It just means we unite around the principles that matter again. And there's nothing radical about a balanced budget.
Amen.
There's nothing radical about constitutional adherence, not just to the Second Amendment, but to every amendment. There's nothing wrong with traditional values, is there? That's a good place to start. And then fourth, there's nothing wrong with states having the sovereignty to control their internal affairs.
Here, here.
That's right.
That's who we are. That's the system we're in. We should push back constantly and consistently until we regain control of that sovereignty that Washington has taken from us all these years.
Mm-hmm.
That's not radicalism. That's called Jeffersonian, Madisonian republicanism. And that's what we're fighting for. And if that makes me an outsider in my own party, so be it. That's just who I'll be until they throw me out. And they might. They might. But I'll promise you this, guys, and I'll answer your questions. In my heart of hearts, I can tell you there's no animosity for 2014. They did what they did. And I forgive it. It's politics, they say, right? I hold no animosity toward any single individual that I've discussed here tonight, not one bit. But I do love those principles more than I love or dislike any individual. And that's why you hear me articulate them and talk about them so often. I know they think I dislike them. I don't. I just want them to come back to the founding principles of the party. And if they do that, I'll keep my mouth shut. But until they come back to those principles, I'm obligated to speak out until I can't speak out anymore. It's just the way I see it. Now, with that said, any questions?
I have one, Chris.
Yes.